Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Town Manager's Download, a podcast about local government and the town of Shrewsbury. Today's podcast is going to cover human resources and the Shrewsbury way, which we look really forward to talking about our own unique perspective on developing employees in local government. I'm Kevin Mizikar, the Town Manager of the town of Shrewsbury, and I'm joined by Principal Department Assistant Taylor Galusha. What's going on, Taylor?
Another Monday. Last Monday of January.
Last Monday of January. How was the weekend?
I had a relaxing weekend. I was disappointed with the outcome of the Bengals-Chiefs game, but
Yeah. I was disappointed.
I don't know
in
how
both
you
games.
feel. Yeah.
I have, so I used to live outside of Philadelphia. We lived about 35 miles from the city when we lived in New Jersey. So I grew a strong disliking for the Philadelphia Eagles. So no offense to any Eagles fans, but everyone knows you're a little bit rough, hard to deal with. So, and then I'm not a Patrick Mahomes fan, so I'll throw that out there as well. So
I'm a Joe Burrow fan.
yeah,
Yep. And I'm
Cool Joe.
obligated by
Joe Cole.
obligated by personal matters to like the 49ers. So
Yes, I can
played
make
top
that
golf
connection.
outside of a little outside of Levi Stadium. You could swing the club and you'd see like the stadium in the back. It was
Really?
pretty cool, yeah.
Nice.
They're in the middle of nowhere, just like kind of Foxborough is, but
Right. Not in the city.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll still watch the Super Bowl for
Yeah,
the
so it's
commercials.
Chiefs and Eagles in the Super Bowl. There's the commercial you have to now watch after halftime. Did you see that?
No.
That's all I can provide. I don't know what's
Do it.
going to happen. It was a
Is it
cliffhanger.
related to Taylor Swift?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, you would have seen it if it was. I know that's for sure. So my family more than I, but my kids have been doing a lot of skiing. So you do you ski too?
No, my parents used to ski. I wanted to try snowboarding,
I did
but
that. I've done that.
I've never been skiing or snowboarding before. I don't know if mountains, ice, and snow would mix well for me, but it's worth a
That's
shot.
fair. It can be fun and scary all at the same time. So you're not getting any younger, so you got to get out there and try. How about that?
Right. Okay. By next year, I will have gone snowboarding.
Okay. Wow.
I'll set a date.
That's
By next year, by 2024, I will have gone snowboarding.
got to get you some good wrist protectors because you
Yeah.
need to be able to carry on with your work the next day.
We had a lot going on in Shrewsbury too, the last week or so.
Right. Yep. It was Kristen Lass has departed for her new position with the town of Westford, and we're in the transition period and thinking a lot about that. And we'll have some conversations with Kristina about succession planning, and Kristina Ordung, who will be on for today's episode. So, spent the last day of Kristen's tenure in Shrewsbury. She was at the MMA conference, which I attended, and several of the select board members attended, which is a great gathering.
Yeah.
A lot of professional development opportunities in Boston. It was 2 weekends ago at this point when it was rather good. A lot of people there. First time is back in person in 3 years because of COVID. So got to hear from the new governor and new lieutenant governor and their promises and plans as they go into their first budget cycle. So I'm optimistic about those things. A lot of conversations about housing and development. So, which is not surprising or new with the new administration. But budget process is going forward as planned, and we'll be moving into the more public phase here in the next few weeks with the planning board. We'll make a presentation to both them and the select board before the end of February. And we've got a lot of work to do to get there because departmental budget submissions have come in a lot higher than I anticipated, which I shouldn't be surprised because of inflation and other things that departments want to do. But unfortunately, we don't have all the resources that we need, but we never will. So we'll be working through that process. And then, of course, a couple big projects still moving through planning board, including the Patrick Subaru, Bach, New England at 701 South Street at the corner of Route 9, the 1 through 7 Maple Avenue project, which I attended the last meeting with that and been paying really close attention with a lot of people have with that important project. And I really see a split between the vision and what can be in the town center and some concerns about parking and density, which I certainly appreciate and understand those residents who thoughtfully and professionally are able to talk about their concerns at planning board and send us emails, which are all taken into consideration. But I still see that this project is a key in the revitalization of the town center. We spent a lot of time working with residents to develop that vision, and part of this is really putting more people in the town center to build a sense of place and have a critical mass and have foot traffic and think about things differently. So that's really the balance. If this was any old other project before we redid the zoning and rethought about what we want the town center to be in the future, I can understand the concerns would be more relevant and specific to challenging this idea for this project. But I really think that this project idea meets the forward-thinking vision that we have for the town center and putting more people there and making it a place where folks live, dine, work, gather. So I'm interested to see how this will still play out. The developer has requested a continuance, so they won't be at the meeting this Thursday coming up with the planning board. They want to go back and have a conversation with the select board at the select board's request about the project plan and what's been going on. So that'll be an interesting conversation coming up on March 14th at the select board meeting. So
February.
Excuse me, February 14th.
Don't go
at the
too
select
far.
board. Yeah, way ahead, way ahead. So, yeah, there is a lot going on. And also in February, there's going to be a public hearing on the cable franchise agreement renewal.
Chris did a good presentation at the board's January 24th. Yeah, January 24th meeting.
Yes.
Chris Roy, the general manager for Selco.
Yeah,
Definitely very informative.
Yeah, folks should check that out. This will be a new agreement, 5 years. It really talk about meeting the future needs and future vision. It's a plan that's a lot different than the past cable franchise agreements, as cable is becoming a thing of the past, and we have to look to the future and understand what those impacts are going to be as folks walk away from that kind of way of watching TV and receiving content. So do our best to put a good agreement in place. I think the best that we can do on a funding, from a funding standpoint, is really level funding, and level funding obviously provides challenges in and of itself. Everyone knows things cost more, and if our revenues are stagnant, then our operations are going to be stagnant and falling behind. So it's a small piece of our revenue, but it's also a challenging business environment, the cable business. So, yeah.
Definitely changed rapidly, too.
Yes, Chris did a good job of illustrating that through pictures at the meeting. I would encourage everyone to go back and watch that meeting from January 24th if they're interested in it. Things have really changed in the last 10 years, let alone the last 40 or so since we've had the cable franchise in place. The first public cable operation in the Commonwealth.
I did learn that at the meeting.
In Shrewsbury, that's right. So we were on the cutting edge.
Go us.
Took us the whole way to the Supreme Court and back, too. There's a critical Supreme Court decision about cable operations, which Shrewsbury was involved in the 1980s.
The more you know.
So tons going on.
All right. How about we jump head first or feet first into the meat of our discussion today about human resources and everything. And we'll start, as we normally do, with kind of your role as it relates to human resources. I think it's very common, becoming less common for town managers and assistant town managers kind of take on the human resources director role in addition to their responsibilities. So what is your role as a town manager related to that today?
That's something that I do want to talk about or we will talk about quite frequently today, is how local governments manage human resources, especially in smaller cities and towns. And historically, that has been a role associated with another position, town manager, town administrator, and standalone human resources departments are less common than I think folks would expect them to be. Through the 1953 Town Manager Act, the town manager is appointed as the personnel director, and I think the most critical aspect of that is it keeps me formally responsible for the hiring and termination of employees. And that's a role that I think is still important, but as we've matured human resources over the last few years, my day-to-day role, and especially the town manager's day-to-day role as it compared to my predecessors, continues to decline, which is, I think, a good thing and is right given the size of our organization. So it's an evolving role, but I mean, primarily it's, I have the ultimate decision for most of the hiring and firing associated across all municipal departments, and that includes police, fire, the administrative, DPW, but does exclude the schools and Selco. They have their own authority, just like we talk about almost every episode. So,
and you've, from your time here, you've also seen the structure of how our organization sits has changed a little bit. Do you want to talk about kind of organizational planning, how the town got to where it is today? We've talked a lot about the changes over like the lifetime of Shrewsbury as a town manager, select board, form of government.
So from a complete and utter historic basis, I find it was interesting that I think the first town manager, who was only in this position for 3 years, from 1953 to 1956, really struggled with how things were to work and operated. And then the longtime, probably most notable town manager, Dick Carney, in one of his first days, or perhaps even before he got to the town, he actually drew out the organization chart on a piece of paper, identified the roles of each position, whether it was the town meeting, the select board, or the town manager, and had town council sign off on it. So we call it the Carney org chart because we can't come up with a better name for it than that. But it just goes to show the importance at that time of transitioning from the select board, having a really the full control and authority over day-to-day operations and human resources and personnel management, to shifting to the town manager. And it's really critical and important to take a look at that org chart at that time to see how it was operated. And it was rather flat and has evolved a lot to where we are today. Mr. Morgado, the former manager, used a very similar organization chart the whole time. Occasionally he would have an assistant manager. Sometimes he had an assistant to the town manager. And I was really surprised looking at that org chart when I got here, the number of direct reports. And I was concerned about my ability to be effective having almost 20 people report to me on a day-to-day basis across all the departments. So we changed that through a professional study that was done in 2018, an organizational assessment. The critical component that came out of that was the creation of the Department of Public Works, which consolidated a lot of departments. I think it was 6 or 8 different entities into the single Department of Public Works, which obviously consolidated a lot of department heads into division managers and put them under the oversight of the DPW director. And that's the model that we've used for the last 5 or so years, and it will continue to be the structure in general that we have going forward. But each and every time a position opens up, we really look hard at what its responsibility is, how it fits in the organization, what we're going to do in the future. And as we've talked about with Kristina leaving recently, we've begun to rethink how the 2 assistant town managers work. Kristina was unique in both her tenure with the town and her skill set with planning and economic development
Yeah.
and building inspector, and then human services, which are two completely separate things. So we're rethinking that right now, and on paper in the future, we're not worried about changing the org chart as a first step, but we want to see what we can do best to implement the strategic plan. That continues to be our key focus as we move forward. So I'm looking forward to how the organization may change and evolve, and I'm not someone that just wants to leave the organization in place. I want to suit the needs of the community and utilize our employees as best as we possibly can, and that's what we're thinking about right now.
And this kind of personnel organizational planning ties a lot to the budget because it does end up being a big chunk of that pie, the operational expenses of the town.
Right, yeah, it certainly has a direct relation, and now it will tie into, what those individual goals are, but, personnel costs is the single greatest expense across all town departments, and I would include schools and Selco into that as well. Selco, as a part of the organization, has the smallest percentage of personnel cost to total budget. The school has the highest, and we're pretty high ourselves. So I don't know the percentage, but say about 20 million of our 35 million on municipal operations goes towards personnel. So a vast majority. So whenever we consider future costs, when we hire additional employees or consider cost of living adjustments, things like that, most of that goes into personnel.
And it's like kind of hard to plan for the future in local government just because of how, I think previously people would come and stay for a while. Now it's a little bit more fluid. I know we'll get into this a little bit more with Kristina, but that also makes it a little bit more difficult to budget for.
Yeah, it's completely different. I think that kind of era and generation of municipal employee is part of the, silver tsunami or whatever you call it, the, kind of the changeover in that set of employees is happening now and has happened in the last few years. So we have a lot of new employees, a lot of different motivating factors for this generation, and but a lot of opportunities for us to work creatively and retain them and build them and grow them since there's been so much turnover.
And just HR in general and local government is a little bit different, like we talked about and we'll continue to talk about. When I was in Middleton, our assistant town administrator was also our HR director, and that kind of causes, maybe it's underutilized in smaller towns and cities, not the first top of mind thing all of the time.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of both. And some, maybe the latter has more of an outsized role than people would think. It's definitely it's not a frontline position.
Yeah.
It's not something that people can understand their impact as a resident on how HR would help them. So I think historically it's town administrators, town managers haven't even proposed it because it's hard to make that direct linkage to how it's going to benefit taxpayers. But it obviously does. It's so important to the success of our employees, safety of our employees, the risk management for town and its operations on a whole number of levels. But since it's a kind of a mission support, it doesn't get the recognition and funding, and will always be one of the last things to get funded in a small town as the organization matures. But we can definitely talk to Kristina a little bit about that when she's on.
And have you found in your career and just in general, like the importance of professional development, just from start to end?
Yeah, I think it's something that we've really been focusing on a lot more and putting resources in place. We've spent put a lot of American Rescue Plan Act funds in place to really help speed our development. And as I mentioned in the intro about the Shrewsbury Way, and that's what we've named as our employee development program. Call it the Shrewsbury Way. It's kind of us taking responsibility for the development of our own staff and making sure that we have human resources in place that can support the needs of our residents, because we don't see it happening externally. That doesn't mean we'll do all the programs internally, but it means that we'll be seeking out different training opportunities and sending folks off to have them be well-rounded professionals to meet our needs, rather than assuming we're going to get that when we hire them. So it's critical to what we're going to be doing in the future through the Shrewsbury Way, is developing it as we go. And we want to make it one of the, as we always say, the best local government development programs. So we'll get into that, of course, in some greater detail. It goes to stand that even small private sector organizations don't have their own training program, but I think we're now a large enough public entity that we have the ability and expectation and requirements to partake in this type of support for our employees, for our residents' benefit.
Yeah, I feel like our office has always been super supportive of any sort of training opportunities that we've had, and I think that's unique, but it shouldn't be unique. I think it's more important that line of thought becomes more common in local government in general,
and one of the
especially with the webinars that we have access to now.
Right. And one of the specific challenges that I see, and I know it's not unique to the public sector, but is that general management training. Like we do a really good job of seeing and recognizing performance from the most technical, technical performance of staff members. Like, are you good at financial management? How did you support the budget process? You're the best assessor. You're the best engineer. But that doesn't always translate into leading other humans. Right. So that's a critical part of what we're focused on: developing leadership, developing management, and allowing that to help us move the whole organization forward.
Now we can jump into it's going to be our favorite, the day we get a question, please.
Right.
Our resident question segment. You guys can email us at tmdownload@shrewsburyma.gov to submit any questions for our podcast, and they can be related to anything. We'll keep them till we talk about like a topic area that they relate to. If they're more general, we'll fit them into the next upcoming episode. But we'd really like to hear from everyone and engage with you in another way.
Yeah, and even if it was a question about a topic, say you have an HR question that we're talking about today, still send it in, because we can follow up in the next episode and make sure we touch base with our guest before we come back and provide the best answer that we can. So tmdownload@shrewsburyma.gov. We'll keep it confidential on the air. Public Records Act requires that if you send us an email, it would be a public record, but we're not going to disclose who that is through the podcast. So we'll keep it confidential, but look forward to your questions or topic ideas that you may have.
Yes.
I guess the only thing that really comes to mind, because it bothered me, is, there was a question at the last town meeting like many other organizations that I've talked about, we're late in evolving human resources. So the fiscal year 23 budget, which we're in right now, is the first time we had a standalone human resources department. And I think with good intentions, a town meeting member stood up and said, well, if we haven't had human resources for 200 years, 295, if you want to be specific, why do we need it now? And it just goes back to what I previously said, is that I understand where residents may not see a direct value and benefit like they see adding a police officer or a firefighter, but we're an organization of nearly 300 employees, and providing the right training, providing the right onboarding, providing the right personnel policies, providing the right benefits, all those things associated with human resources is exactly why we need a human resources department. Right. If we had 35 employees, my answer would have been no. But the fact is that we have nearly 10 times that amount, and it's really essential. It allows me to do what I need to focus on on a day-to-day basis, and not worry about what our Human Resources Director, Kristina Ordung, focuses on a daily basis. So we absolutely need human resources, and we'll look forward to this conversation.
I think human resources in itself ends up being an employee benefit just with the support they offer. I think burnout was pretty common from the pandemic, and I think our HR team does a good job of just supporting employees. I don't know. It's a good place to work.
We probably wouldn't
They
have
make it a
gotten-
good place to
We wouldn't
work.
have gotten through the pandemic as smoothly as we did if we didn't have an HR crew on board with us at that time. So speaking of having an HR crew on board, why don't we bring Kristina in? All right, so we are pleased to have Kristina Ordung, the town's first Human Resources Director, join us on the Town Manager Download. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Great. We're happy to have you as well. So we always like to start off and learn about your path into local government and your career path in general. So give us the download. How long have you been with the town, and why did you choose this career path to end up as the Director of Human Resources in Shrewsbury?
So I've been with the town for a little over 4 years now. I began my journey in September of 2018. I think I fell into local government. I was attending the Eisenberg School of Business at UMass Amherst. And through my education there, I really realized I didn't want to work for a corporation one day. I thought I would work in nonprofit or for a benefit corporation. And upon graduation, I took a job at a staffing agency so that I could pay my bills to get to my job, sort of in a survival cycle. And I continued my job search and found myself with another community and really found meaning from my work. But that community was quite the commute away. And so when I found this opportunity in Shrewsbury as the Assistant to Town Manager Human Resources Coordinator, I applied.
So you're in Natick, right?
I
Spent
was.
some time in Natick. Awesome.
Nice mall.
Very small. That's right. That's right. So, Kristina, we talked in the first segment on the episode about a little bit about, which I want to get into now, human resources and how they evolve in local government. And you were the first, not only are you the first human resources director for the town of Shrewsbury, but you were the first HR generalist position for the town. So talk about that. What was it like coming into the organization? Who hired you? How did we get through that process without having an HR department?
So my understanding is that when the position was posted, it was because the assistant town manager, Kristen Lass, was leading the human resources function, but it was really decentralized through department heads, and it was becoming a full-time job. And so the town recognized that we needed a full-time role, and you posted the position. And my interview process began with you, Kevin Mizikar, and Kristen Lass in what would soon become my office.
That's right.
And so that was the first round, and I think you guys were really exploring what my background was, and you were asking a lot of questions about state and federal laws and just exploring what my history was. And then we moved into a second round interview where I was interviewing with a variety of department heads. There was a member of the then Board of Selectmen, and there was a member of the Personnel Board, where you guys got a little bit more in depth and you had, that broad range of interested parties. And then I was invited to my third round interview. And so I arrived that day, and you guys sat me in a room with a laptop with a page prompt, and you said, you guys are going to create a presentation of what you would do in your first 6 months as the Human Resources Coordinator. You invited me to speak with department heads if I had any questions for department heads, and you made the IT director available to me. And I created my PowerPoint, and then after those 2 hours were up, I was able to present my presentation to an even greater group of department heads. And I really thought to myself, it's now or never, it's my time to shine. And I guess it ended up working out well because 4 years later, here I sit.
That was intense.
It was intense.
I forgot about some of that. Pretty evil back in the day. That's great. Yeah, I remember that. That was good. So you came on board into this first centralized role. What were some of the principles that you were thinking about when you came on board? Early in your career, coming into a central HR role.
Well, I really wanted to learn what you guys were doing then, what was working for you, and what your pain points were. If it's not broke, I wasn't going to fix it. And so I really just wanted to see what the baseline was. And then I really wanted to make sure that we were being compliant, we were being legally compliant. So one of the first things that I did when I got here is I took a question off of our employment application that had recently become illegal. We had instituted query checks for all of our new employees that were coming on. So I was really just kind of assessing and diagnosing, I would say, in my first 6 months to a year.
And so all those things that were being done in part by a bunch of other people in the organization. How many employees do we have?
We have 250 employees, but it swells to 500 employees with election workers and recreation staff.
So throughout the course of the year, at any given time, we're probably always hovering around 300 or so. And so that's the challenge for town managers and other administrators and organizations where there is no central HR function, is you're pulled away from developing the budget because you have an interview with, for some other position, or you handle like first line, second line, third line challenges that employees may have, whether it's with another employee, with their job description. And those challenges could be things like, are they fairly compensated? Are they classified, right? So those things get spread and, quite frankly, not done very well or not done at all if there's no human resources function. And too many cities and towns in Massachusetts and across the country, especially the smaller ones, don't dedicate the resources to really helping themselves overcome those challenges. So I was talking about a question that was asked at town meeting that you probably remember from last year that was frustrating for me. But again, I get it. I understand why folks could think this is discretionary, but I really don't see that as being discretionary. But in your words, what do you think the importance of human resources is for the town?
So we serve all town employees as an employee advocate and a management partner. So we have that sort of delicate balance, and we're there to support employees through the full employment life cycle. We're there with you for your first day through your last day, with all the highs and lows in between. So we touch upon classification and compensation, talent acquisition, all of the policies and procedures in the workplace, change management, which you guys touched upon every time there's a vacancy, and for many other areas beyond that, leave and absence management, employee relations, learning and development, like the new Shrewsbury Way, benefits and health insurance, and those are just a few things.
So what have you been working on in, say, the last 3 to 6 months? Maybe especially, we talk a lot about the strategic plan. How do you think that's influencing your role, and what have you been up to for the last few months?
So in the different pillars of the strategic plan, I think the ones that human resources can draw upon most closely are exceptional and engaged and connected, but that engaged and connected is internally facing. So over the last 3 to 6 months, I've been really focusing on a compensation study for all of our non-union employees. So back when I first started in 2018, 2019, we underwent a classification and compensation study for all of our non-union employees. And in order to keep that study relevant, we have to do a compensation study every 5 years. So I've been working on collecting that data and analyzing that data so that we can make any recommended adjustments to our schedule. Something else that I've been working on is paid family medical leave. So the state of Massachusetts now offers paid family medical leave, and in order to stay relevant and competitive, it's something that we need to bring to our community. Shrewsbury actually has a leg up on a lot of other communities because we're already serving employees, I would say, for more than half of the leaves that people take, because through our sick leave plans, we have a built-in disability benefit. And so that piece we're already covering. The piece that we're missing is family leaves.
So human resources is obviously going to continue to evolve, and there'll be times of hiring and times when we're doing less hiring, just as the economic changes ebb and flow. But what challenges, especially recruitment challenges, have you seen? I know there's a lot generally talking about the country and how employers are searching for employees and their skill sets that employers are missing that they want in their employees. So what have you seen from your position, and is there anything that the town has been doing specifically to address some of those challenges?
Definitely. So you guys touched upon the silver tsunami earlier in this podcast. There's a ton of retirements. The younger baby boomers are reaching that retirement age, and there just hasn't been another generation that has been as large as them. So it's going to be a very long time until that gap in the workforce is refilled, and with them retiring is institutional knowledge that we just cannot replace. Selfishly, it's been a great opportunity for myself. We've hired a Selco general manager, a police chief, a town accountant, a town clerk, to name a few, but there's been a lot of other leadership positions and other important positions in town that have become vacant due to retirements. We're working on succession planning throughout our organization by asking department heads to complete 5-year staffing plans and to continue to evolve those plans as they have a vacancy, or as they see trends in other local governments, or even as technology changes and their needs in their department change. And we hire for a really diverse range of positions, everything from financial positions to water treatment plant operators to police officers. Some of those skill sets are becoming more rare, like water treatment plant operators are extremely hard to come by, whether you're in the public or the private sector. And some positions are becoming less desirable due to current events, like working in the police department. And so those have been very challenging recruitments.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. I see a lot of changes in the police department. So one of the things that makes the water treatment plant positions so hard is because they have very high level of sophistication, very high level licensing, and folks may initially question that, but everyone just takes a simple step back and say, well, we're pumping hundreds of millions of gallons into people's homes every day, which they're going to consume. Well, we have to have the right people in place with certifications and requirements that know chemistry, know how to operate the plant, know what happens whenever levels change and adjustments need to be made to make sure our water is clean, potable, healthy, something that we can all be proud of, which we've worked on a lot over the last few years. So with those skill set gaps that we're seeing in a lot of positions, we've been working a lot on something called the Shrewsbury Way. So what is the Shrewsbury Way, and what have you been working on to that end, and where do you think you'll take us in the next few years?
So my vision for the Shrewsbury Way program is to create a really robust training and development program that touches all of our employees. So we can begin with sort of the first tier, which is foundational training for all employees, from customer service to conflict of interest, harassment training, just those basic trainings that we want to arm all of our employees with to help them succeed. And then I'd really like to go on a department by department basis and understand from those department heads what specific topics that their employees need to be well versed in. It's going to be different for the police department than it is going to be for a financial department. And then I'd really like to drill down into individual positions. We're lucky that in Massachusetts we have really great statewide resources. So we have the Massachusetts Municipal Human Resources Association that can provide great foundational training for employees, for dispatch. And the police department, they have the unique opportunity to look nationwide at other communities in Massachusetts, but also to the private sector. So I'd really like to create this master training document for all town employees that will help us get new employees up to speed sooner and also help us with budgeting.
Yeah, so, I mean, we approach staff development really seriously, and we try to do it in a number of different ways. So we bring consultants in and do small group training. We send folks out to programs. Taylor, why don't you just take 2 seconds and talk about your finance seminar that you're currently doing right now and how that's been working out?
Yeah, so I'm taking the Massachusetts Municipal Association's financial management seminar. So it's 5 Fridays, started at the new year, and then it'll end in 2 weeks. I have this week and the next week. It's 10 4-hour sessions, so I go from 10 3-hour sessions. I go 9 to 12 and then 1 to 4, covering like different topics. So we have practitioners and those that have retired teaching us about different areas of financial management in municipal government. We did assessing last week with John Steinberg over in Westboro. We had town accounting, we did 2 sessions of that. We're doing HR next week. So it's just been a lot of good, I guess they've used practical examples to help teach us, but it's given me more exposure to that financial aspect that I took a course on it when I did my master's, but obviously you need to keep learning, and learning is probably the most important thing to progress in your career, whether that's from a textbook, a class, or just working day to day. So super excited to be doing that. I know a few others have done it in the past, and I think they do a good job giving in 10 or 5 weeks doing that much content for us.
So a few employees have taken that seminar, and then there's another seminar that's put on by Suffolk University for a certificate program in local government management. We've had several employees take that. Kristina, we do a lot of work when we think about trying to give employees the right skills to move from their technical or administrative level positions into a higher level supervisory leadership position. So I think I can think of 3, but you may think of more different programs and approaches that we use in that area. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. I think our sort of entry-level supervisory management leadership training is the Effective Leadership Development class hosted by Mark Way. We have sent a lot of employees to that class, and I think it serves them throughout their employment here and beyond, whether they're emerging or existing leaders. And then sort of our second tier is the Supervisory Leadership Development program that's hosted through the Massachusetts Municipal Human Resources Association. And that class gets a little bit more in depth. It talks about managing union employees, which a lot of our public works supervisors find to be helpful. And then we have the newly created Shrewsbury Way Academy Leadership Edition with John Wortman. We're actually going through our first cohort now. I think this week is our ninth session with him. And so that has been really interesting. We're asking department heads and managers to critique this class, give us feedback so that we can continue to evolve it and improve it.
Yeah, so that class includes 16 one-hour sessions that all department leadership members are participating in, and we've gone over topics like, giving public presentations, giving employees feedback. And what are some of the other topics?
Effective goal setting, motivation, conflict resolution, effective meetings.
Right.
I think one of the things that I've gotten out of it that I'd like to highlight is learning more about my colleagues and how I can work more effectively with them. For instance, I know I could talk in circles with one department head and I should definitely bring an agenda to that meeting. And I know that with another colleague, they're definitely going to want me to get to the point. So I'll give them all of my supporting information later if they ask for it, but I'm just going to get to the point with my ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good program. I think it provides a lot of foundational skills that local government leaders need. And so the Shrewsbury Way is really a suite of programs that we're using to take responsibility for the development of our own staff, and it will continue to evolve, and we'll add products and features to meet specific needs or general needs, and strive for all the goals that we look to achieve. So as we think about local government, we know we have a lot of similarities to private sector businesses, but also a lot of differences. But Kristina, can you talk to us a little bit about the complexity of HR and local government, and maybe a little bit about the benefits, compensation, retention packages, and how they may differ than our private sector counterparts?
Definitely. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is that our budget process through town meeting is so accurate. What we present at town meeting is what's needed exactly by each department. And so when we have a resignation or a retirement, we may have trouble pivoting. We often don't have the opportunity to provide retention increases if we have a great employee who's looking to move on to another opportunity, and we would love to retain them, but we don't have the budget flexibility to do that. We also don't have the ability to pay large bonuses like the private sector may have, but there's some trade-offs there. So we recently did a survey amongst our employees to find out how we could improve their work environment here in Shrewsbury, and a huge percentage of them said that they found meaning from their work, and that was one of the reasons why they wanted to stay in Shrewsbury. And so, like I said, there's trade-offs. Another thing that I think about is the difference between having a pension and a 401k. So when you have a pension, you have that payment for the rest of your life. When you have a 401k, you have X amount of dollars for as long as you live. So there's trade-offs there. But when you're in the middle of your career, a 401k is portable. So you can move it from one company to another. But with a pension, it takes a long time for you to actually see the fruits of your labor, and it's only transferable from one local government in Massachusetts to another. I think the days of employees staying for 30 plus years has come and gone, and so it can be a hard sell for people emerging into local government.
Yeah, I mean, I see these challenges. Certainly, local government employees, it's our goal to fairly compensate people. And, if you look at the total benefits package, I think we do a rather good job at that. You're never going to build generational wealth. Like, I'll just let my kids know right now, they're not going to have the $10 million nest egg, when it's all said and done for me from this position. So, but, we are fairly compensated, and you can make a good living in local government. There are those trade-offs. Again, for me personally, pension is a challenge, right? Like, so I worked for the federal government. That time doesn't transfer into Massachusetts. I worked in the state of New Jersey. That time will not transfer into Massachusetts. So I think there are some antiquated parts that we're trying to address in Shrewsbury and maybe in a broader context. I think the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and its local governments will have to evolve in relatively short order if we're going to continue to be a competitive sector in the economy, and we'll have to be here. And the only way to have good employees is to be competitive. So I think we all need to find a way to do that through advocacy groups and other means here in the state. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and we've put a performance-based system in place in Shrewsbury to make sure that those employees who are working and achieving their goals can get real, I'll say, individualized incentives to do that. So that's something that's not very common in local government, but that we've focused on creating here for the right reasons. So any other thoughts on local government challenges or our performance management system before we move into the final aspect of your time with us here, Kristina?
Well, I could talk a lot about the performance appraisal system if you'd like me to.
And what's your experience with that been? How has it been received in town, and where do you see it going?
So I see the performance appraisal system staying with the town. It was a recommendation that came with that classification and compensation study that I referred to earlier, and it's been a long time coming. So we completed that study in fall of 2019. We implemented the compensation changes from September of 2019 to February of 2020, and then COVID hit. And we worked through March to December of 2020, drafting the performance appraisal documents and figuring out what our process would be. And we finally unveiled it to employees in December of 2020 in 2 virtual information sessions. And then we worked through the spring of 21 with employees and managers, drafting their goals. And we finally signed off on those goals in June of 2021. And we've been working ever since. We're now in our 2nd cycle. I think it brings alignment through the organization, and it helps our high performers. Before we moved from a longevity-based step system where the majority of our employees had met their maximum earning potential after 3.5 years, into a system that compensates employees based on the accomplishment of their goals that's in alignment throughout the entire organization.
Yeah, it's certainly it's taken a lot of work for us to get here. It's a big change. I think it allows us to ensure that we're performing the way we want to, and really be able to report those results out to residents, which is just as important as our performance, to help them understand what it is that we're doing on a day-to-day basis on their behalf. And it certainly wasn't easy, and it wasn't received with open arms, so no one should be, assuming that happened, that people came running to us and saying thank you for, going through this process. But I think everyone gets the big picture, right? Most employees understand why we're moving in that direction. It gives autonomy and buy-in, and allows them to see how they fit into the bigger role, no matter what their level is in the organization. You hear time and time again, that's what people want, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to provide employees. And sometimes when it comes to being the best, right, you have to push the envelope. And I know performance-based systems aren't radically new in employment environments, but they're not that common in government. So we want to be the best. So we've set out on this path, and we'll continue to work at it. So why don't we have 2 more questions.
Okay.
What makes the Human Resources Department the best?
Ooh.
Did you see how many times I said the best?
Just so we could be the best local government in the world.
The best human resources, they just go together.
Oh,
Peanut
that's
butter
it?
and jelly. Yeah.
Okay, peanut butter and jelly.
Yep. I think what makes human resources the best is the fact that we get to help every employee. We're there for you on the best day when you're receiving a promotion, and we're there for you on the worst day, whether it's personal or professional. So we get to see employees through all the highs and lows.
Great. I see human resources as really taking over all the responsibilities that are challenging and supporting employees, and I think the Shrewsbury Way Academy is going to be the best training government or local government training program. So I look forward to continue to build that out with you and the entire team. So the final question, Taylor, do you want to do the final question? No, I'll do the final question. All right. So we do the best question.
Okay.
Because we want to be the best local government in the world. You've told us what it may be to be the best human resources department. But for you personally, what's the best time of the year?
I like the fall.
The fall.
I like the fall in New England.
Taylor?
I like the fall too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No, it's not
I
the
like
best
like
season.
I like. Oh, okay.
Oh, the
Okay.
best
It doesn't have to
time.
be the season.
Oh,
But I would say the
wait.
fall
I can
too.
relate it to local government.
Like some people would love town meeting time if you're, maybe the moderator or something like that.
I like the month of June
Okay. Why the
because
month of
town
June?
meeting is over.
Town meeting's over. Check.
And we're almost at the end of our budget year, and school is almost out, and so I don't have traffic when I come into work, and everyone calms down. It's a little bit quieter.
It is calm for
The annual
those few
report is
months.
out and off
Yep.
my plate at that point. I don't know. I feel like local government, it's like their hibernation, the month of June, and
Yeah.
then we go back into it.
Yeah.
I guess I like the month of May. So that is my birthday month.
Okay.
And so that's
And
one
town
reason.
meeting.
And it's town meeting. It's like our Super Bowl.
It is.
It is
yeah.
our. Mhm.
Yeah. The best time of the year for me professionally is the fall. I really like to do the budget forecasting and looking forward and thinking about the opportunities, how to overcome challenges and starting that new cycle again. It is probably one of the most hectic times though, as we come off of those months that you have both mentioned and start to get back into the thick of things. But I don't know if it's like that cycle that you get into, like from education, like, it's time to go back to school. But like that has still always stuck with me. Like there's something new about the fall as well, new endeavors. But for here, here in this position is about planning and looking forward to the next fiscal year. So, anything new or exciting that you want to talk about in the next few weeks that are going on in HR or?
In the next few weeks, we'll be discussing paid family medical leave and possible amendments to the personnel bylaw. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition to make it to town meeting, and then how town meeting members in the community will think about it. And then also we have the recommendations for the compensation study that has recently been completed. So there's been a lot of work that's been leading up to these two projects, and so now we're finally in the stage of making recommendations and then making changes, and so
Great.
we're in the final stretches.
That's awesome. A lot of work to get us there. Well, it's been a pleasure. We've been joined today by Kristina Ordung, the Town of Shrewsbury's Human Resources Director, here on the Town Manager Download. Just a reminder to our listeners, if you have a question or a comment, you can always reach us at tmdownload@shrewsburyma.gov. On behalf of Taylor Galusha, I'm Kevin Mizikar. Thank you for listening to the Town Manager Download.